Hey everybody, good news. Last week we finally got the much anticipated gameplay reveal for the upcoming MMO action RPG, Magic Legends, and reception, to be quite frank, was not good. People were not terribly pleased with what we saw from Magic Legends. So what's the big deal? Well, overwhelmingly the biggest complaint that we saw was, this doesn't look like an MMO. We were told that this was going to be a Magic the Gathering themed MMO action RPG. Quite clearly seems like they leaned heavily on the action RPG, and nowhere to be found is the MMO portion of the game. And honestly, I totally get it. I understand why people are so upset because I feel like it's a missed opportunity. I feel like a traditional MMORPG in the Magic universe could be really awesome. But I also don't think the idea that a Diablo-style action RPG in the Magic universe is a bad idea either. In fact, I could totally see this being a cool and interesting game, so I want to talk about what we do know about the game, because beyond getting a bunch of gameplay last week, we also got a ton of information and details. Let's talk about that. What is Magic Legends besides not being an MMO? Action RPG, and looking at the gameplay, boy oh boy does it look a lot like Diablo. And we're not just talking about the gameplay style, the styling, the coloring, and even the animations look like Diablo 3, albeit a bit less polished and just not as good looking. I also saw a lot of comparisons saying this looks a hell of a lot like a mobile game. I'm not sure if it's just the movement or maybe the UI. I will agree that how the cards are represented, it's kind of, something just feels a little off and again, unpolished about it. But it is in the beta, it's not done development, so I guess we could at least give them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to that. The game's not out yet. Action RPG, what else? Well, we'll be traveling to various Magic the Gathering locations like the island of Shiv, and each plane is gonna equate to one huge open world area, and I think this is where they're trying to tie in those MMO elements. Like they did say there are gonna be public events where you will encounter other players, but again, to me that just feels like a multiplayer ARPG, which is fine, it's just not an MMO, but I don't want to harp on that the whole video. It's also worth noting that this is not a procedurally generated game. The maps will be handcrafted. We'll be encountering normal, elite, and boss enemies, and we'll be casting spells. This is where Magic ties in. We have our Planeswalker, and they have their set abilities, but beyond that, we are casting spells and summoning creatures from the decks that we bring into combat. We'll be constructing decks of 12 cards that rotate during play, so at any given time, we have 4 active abilities, and then when we use a spell, it's shuffled into your deck, and then a new one is drawn. You've got mana to cast those spells, which will be slowly regenerating over time, and then also mana globes and health globes will be dropping from enemies. And there's different ways to play. There will be quest missions and ordeals. Quests will be the story-driven content, and ordeals are similar to Diablo bounties or rifts with various objectives. Sometimes there'll be time limits. They're also talking about a director AI system that will be making the encounters harder the better that you play. And one big thing that we saw was that there's no loot in this game. You won't be collecting weapons and armor pieces and enchantments. It's all about the cards. You'll be finding and unlocking spells. So, you know, it sounds kind of cool. Again, I'm fine with a action RPG game like Diablo, but Magic. I won't lie, the gameplay just looks a little unfinished, unpolished, but the game is unfinished, and polish is probably still coming, so we'll let that slide for now until we get a more definitive idea of when the actual launch date is and how the game is looking then. Now I want to talk a bit about the classes, the cards, and the deck system that's going to be in this game. So there will be 5 classes in total, 1 for each color in Magic the Gathering, and each class will have their own 3 unique abilities: a standard attack, a special attack, and a mobility skill. Now so far we've learned about the Mind Mage and the Geomancer. The Mind Mage is a blue class, a ranged focused character that also uses evasion and tricks. Its primary is just a ranged basic attack, and then its secondary is this cone area of effect stun ability. And then the Geomancer, which is the red class, has these melee gauntlets that has a more in-your-face play style with a melee primary attack and an AoE secondary attack. Now the rest of your abilities, besides the 3 that you get from the class that you pick, will come from your spells and the deck that you build. So again, there'll be a deck of 12 cards that you take into any combat scenario, and you'll have 4 of those active at any any given time. Now you can swap your class as well as your decks anytime you go to one of the towns in the game, and also any class can use any other color. For example, the Mind Mage blue class can use red cards in their deck as well. There will also be some sort of progression through traits and passives, although not too many details were revealed about that. All right, so those are the classes. Now let's talk about the thing that really ties this to Magic the Gathering, and that is the cards and the spells. Again, progression in this game is going to come from unlocking and upgrading cards. Now, spells will be broken up into categories like those used in Magic the card game. For example, creatures will be summons, enchantments are basically timed buffs, the trample effect is AoE damage, death touch is just a very high damage, and kicker lets you pay extra mana for a stronger effect. So a lot of the basic abilities and triggers that we see in Magic the Gathering, the card game, will be translated into an action RPG equivalent. Personally, as a fan of Magic, it's going to be cool to see some of this stuff play in. I mean, you know, probably expect similar in terms of all of the gameplay and mechanics, but they'll just be called things that are themed more towards Magic. So yeah, we'll be collecting cards as we play the game. Sometimes they'll drop, sometimes there'll be bonus rewards for completing objectives. And then when we have all these cards, we get to do the deck building. So we'll be building those deck of 12 cards that we take into battle. And they do say that you can freely mix and match 2 colors, but only 2. So we're not gonna be doing this chrome deck with 5 colors. We're not gonna be doing a tri or quad. We're doing only 2, 1 or 2 colors in a deck of 12 cards. It sounds pretty interesting, this idea that we pick a class and we have just 3 baseline abilities, primary, a secondary, and a movement skill. And then we have this deck of 12 skills that will randomly rotate. I can imagine though, that it would be a little frustrating. You know, if I'm using my 1 through 4 keybinds and every time I use an ability, it gets replaced by a random other ability from my deck of 12, I'd have to actually go over and look at what that spell is in order to know what I'm going to use. And that, as stupid as that sounds, like, Force, what are you, an idiot? Of course you look. Well, a lot of times when you play MMOs and RPGs, you intuitively know the skills that and where they are bound. And so this allows you to be very fluid and respond very, very quickly as you play. It might be kind of weird in Magic Legends to, every time I use a skill, have to look in the bottom right-hand corner to see what the new skill is that's on the 1 key now. It sounds like a strange complaint, but as someone who's played a lot of action RPGs and played a lot of MMOs, you come to rely on being very, very fast and fluid with your reactions, and that is dependent on knowing what abilities are assigned to what keys. And so the fact that that's going to constantly be rotating, on one hand sounds interesting, on the other hand sounds like it could be kind of very frustrating also. So a couple of other things I want to touch on. Just, they've said that there's going to be PvP in this game as well. We've learned that there's going to be a 1 versus 1 dueling mode that's going to be done in a best of 3 format, and they're promising some sort of rewards and incentives for PvP. Now, what we haven't heard specifics about is the monetization. They said they don't know exactly what they're going to be charging for money. The game is going to be free to play at its baseline, but I can tell you right now, they're going to charge you to open up booster packs. This is Magic the Gathering. What else do we think is gonna happen? They will charge us to open up booster packs, which will have a random assortment of cards from common to legendary. Like, that is exactly how the monetization is gonna work. We don't need to be coy about this, everybody. We don't need to be like, oh geez, I don't know how we're gonna charge these people playing this Magic the Gathering ARPG game that we're making. How are we gonna make money off of them? What could we possibly do related to Magic the Gathering to make income off of it? They're gonna charge us for the cards. Of course they are. It's almost guaranteed. Maybe I'm just being cynical. Maybe they are not at all gonna charge us for cards. We will only unlock cards through gameplay, and they're gonna make money through cosmetics and maybe convenience features like sped up XP or whatever. But boy, oh boy, the idea that a Magic the Gathering themed game is gonna come out and they won't be charging us for booster packs, it just seems way too unlikely. Going back to this whole MMO debacle, again, when this game was revealed, they said, hey, we're releasing an MMO action RPG. Now, people really attach to that MMO aspect. It seems like what it's really going to be is just a baseline action RPG with some open world-ish multiplayer, like they mentioned that you can encounter other players while doing public events. Now, they actually touched on this, the reason as to why they made the game the way that they did in an interview. They said that they chose to go with top-down rather than a true MMO because summoning creatures is easier to manage from overhead. There was too much looking at Earth Elemental butt. That's a direct quote. They said it's a top-down ARPG and not a traditional MMO because we didn't want you looking at summoned minions' butts. Oh, that sounds like a load of bullcrap. Is it just me? That is the poorest excuse I've ever heard. There's nothing wrong with a Magic ARPG, but that is a shit excuse, I just gotta say. I should also note too, I went to their website today, couldn't find MMO anywhere anymore. I was control F'ing the shit out of that page looking for MMO, was nowhere to be found. Also worth noting, the official Magic Legends YouTube page, if you go to their first trailer, the cinematic reveal, says MMO right in the description. You go to the recent trailer, just uploaded today, can't find MMO in the description. It could be a huge coincidence, and maybe MMO wasn't originally on their page, but I swear it was. I'm an old man though, so my memory might be failing me. It seems like they're aware of the reception. I mean, you look at the like and dislikes from all of the gameplay trailer reveals, it's pretty astounding. People are clearly not thrilled with, I guess, maybe call it a bait and switch. I don't know. It's still too early on. Most people who actually end up playing Magic Legends will not care because the confusion is gone now. There's no more confusion about what this game is. We know it's a Diablo-style ARPG, and that's fine. I'll say it again. I'm fine with the idea of playing a Magic-themed ARPG Diablo-like game. If they can polish it up and make it look a little bit better than it does right now by the time it comes out, I will happily check it out. However, we still have to reiterate, and I'm gonna be a broken record on this every time I talk about this game. This game is being developed by Cryptic Studios and published by Perfect World, and those two companies are known for making pay-to-win, predatory microtransaction in their cash shops in their games. It's just been happening on like everything that they've touched, more specifically Neverwinter, the recent collaboration between those two companies. I'm told it's just a terrible pay-to-win system. I don't know from personal experience, and I will say I played the game, and gameplay wise I actually loved it. I had a lot of fun playing it, but evidently I didn't stick around long enough to see what a disaster the cash shop turned into, and that's kind of actually par for the course for a lot of games, especially games that Perfect World's attached to. They just, over time, they tend to get worse and worse and not better and better when it comes to the monetization systems. But that stuff aside, I would be totally happy to check out a Magic themed ARPG. It feels like there's a lot stacked against this, to be quite honest. I'm still gonna keep tabs on it. I'm still hopeful. Maybe it's to my own detriment, but I remain optimistic about these games until they disappoint me. But whatever, I'll check this thing out, I guess. Maybe, I don't know, dude. There's almost no way that it's not gonna have really, really shitty monetization. I pretty much guarantee it. Man, whatever. What are you gonna do, huh?